Welcome to ES Ascension News. I'm Lisa Renee, your Ascension Guide. Internal structures of ego. Dear Ascending Family, during the Double Grand Trine astrological event at the end of July, we entered another period in the Ascension timeline, which created a frequency split and a timeline split. The splitting in the timeline is that which narrows down the direction of the energetic pathway we are traveling. So during this time, it is another shift forward that holds both endings and beginnings. Many of us now being propelled into a new territory, a new direction, possibly a new career or residence. As each of us on the planet is pushed to make choices from either the higher self or the ego self, these mental attitudes define the parameter of energies that we exist within as a multidimensional energetic being. This means our mental state greatly impacts the internal energies within our aura, and we can be sandblasted quickly by the boomerang of ego thoughts. It is clear that the quality of our mental state and thoughts are relevant to the quality of energies that we may experience in our daily life. As one can imagine asking the question, how many thoughts are you having per day? 50,000? 100,000? The amplified power behind the quality of vibrational energies that drives internal thoughts has greatly accelerated. One reason is that the membranes that separated collective mind fields on the planet are in the process of dissolving. The dissolution of planetary mind membranes creates an expanding energy field of which contains more extremes of the collective mental body energies, which then coalesce together. As extreme energies coalesce, also known as polarity integration, this brings an increase of electrical charge and chaos into the environment. Further, the combination of these extreme collective mental energies can blend into our personal aura much more quickly. If one is not able to discern the quality of energy behind thoughts, it can embed in our aura and install layers of confusion which obfuscate the true set of circumstances. Before, we would manifest outward behaviors relative to an internalized ego thought, and there would be a consequence to that action that we could see playing out on the external. Now, there is no external action required for the immediate consequence of the quality of internal thoughts. We are in a field which only the consistent state of internal thoughts is that which manifest instantaneously upon the internal and external world simultaneously. Thus, our internal mental state and quality of thoughts have a great impact upon us before we even have a chance to act upon those thoughts. This is the difference we encounter now with the state of internal thoughts. The state of the internal structures of ego has a great consequence to the quality of energy we experience throughout our daily life. At this time, we have an incredible number of timeline potentials which allow for alternate directions in our spiritual ascension. This phase places a forced transformation upon our entire being, which changes the direction of where we have been recently focusing our energies and attention. The process of being aligned to the Ascension timeline has those of us embodied to serve that purpose being squeezed through the myriad of different potentials, possibilities, and probabilities. Our spiritual self-commitment level, energetic signature, and the design of our personal consciousness stream is put into play now, more than we have ever experienced on the planet before. This gives us a phase of push comes to shove type sensation, which brings with it a sense of urgency and possibly some confusion with that feeling. This, in effect, is compared to a massive routing and transit which is taking place in the internal world of souls, the external world of people. Many of us are in a state of transformation and change which leads to a new transit in the timeline. Those connected to their spiritual source light or in communication with spirit are being transited or moved by their spiritual intelligence. Those disconnected from their spirit are propelled through ego identity forces and are being transited by their ego intelligence. This transit is relational to the degree of ego structure in full control over the body, which greatly impacts the vibrational quality of the overall auric field. For obvious reasons, the latter, which is the movement governed by ego, is not preferred, as it has misery and separation, isolation, which is attached to its experience. As many of us know by now, the ego is perpetually miserable and unhappy, with few glimpses of relief stemming from material instant gratification. We are in a heavy learning curve where the opportunity to clear the internal structures of ego has a very strong repercussion in the quality of our life. Law of structures. There are universal laws governing structure, which is architecture, which exist at both energetic levels, which is the pre-matter stage, and physical levels, which is the matter stage, for absolutely everything in existence. Most of the pre-matter knowledge of these universal laws of structure is kept hidden within the secret societies, such as the many allies organized around the pyramid of the Masonic orders. Fundamentally, the name Mason means builder. To be an expert builder or craftsman, one has a trade of which understands the principles and laws governing building a structure in both the macrocosm and the microcosm. In this example, the law extends the knowledge to exist both at the pre-matter level of the energetic spiritual blueprint as well as the manifested result of the structural form in matter. This advanced knowledge gives the builder access to understand the collection of energetic resources within a structure and how to direct those energies, those world of forces, for some intentional purpose. Obviously, the energetic purpose of the structure must be defined by the architect-builder and can be designed as either intentionally destructive or intentionally positive for humanity. This same law of structure applies to all things in the macro-micro that have a form, whether it's a monument, churches, skyscrapers, businesses, organizations, communities, houses, altars, and even websites. This moves consecutively down to the collective human level, which impacts energetic behavior, directly leading all the way to an individual's mind, body, and spirit. Most of us are aware that the controlling factions, known as the archontic deception of the negative alien agenda, infiltrated secret societies to abuse and corrupt this universal knowledge and its energetic relationship to the planetary consciousness technology. This knowledge remains hidden from the masses, that in most cases are unable to perceive the manipulation of structures, existing both physically and energetically designed to enslave humanity. For purposes relating to taking back control over one's own mind, body, and spiritual consciousness, we are discussing the foundation of the law as it is relevant to become aware of the internal structures of ego operating in one's body. All matter in the universe is composed of layers of vibrating energy. All consciousness energy vibrates and manifests in accordance to a higher law or principle governing the structure or body. The geometric form, which is the blueprint plus consciousness intention, determine the energetic content and vibration within the structure or body. The more perfect the geometric form, the more perfect the energy content and vibration is harmonized. Consciousness energy, life force, or spirit is constantly moving and transforming. Energy cannot remain stagnant and must follow the structure within the form, which creates change. Change is both essential and inevitable for evolution, which is a blueprint of spirit inhabiting form. When we apply these universal laws of structure to improve the energetic structures living inside our own physical form, or to improve other types of structures we have operating in our lives, we will achieve beneficial, clear, and efficient results. This is because we intend to live in harmony with the law. All energetic structures, containers, houses, bodies, or entities must be defined to determine the energetic content and its vibration within the structure. It is important to understand that this is a universal law governing energy and form. If the energetic or physical structure is not defined with a clear mission, purpose, or intention, it means that the structure, whether it's a container, house, body, or entity, will be invaded, infiltrated, or used by dark forces or another person who will take it over for their specific agenda. The act of commanding one's space is participating with this law. By defining the authority of which energies one allows into their body, or into their house, or other container. This responsibility is with the individual person to command their space and to defend their right to choose their authority. This is not something that God's Source or Christos families can do for you. This is because the Christos families are obedient to the natural laws of God, which never allows superimposition over another being's personal will to choose. 3 layers of ego mind. In order to understand the internal structures of ego, which we also refer to as houses of ego, it requires the awareness that there are 3 main layers. The 3 layers of mind work together to serve the functions of the ego in all human beings. Each energetic layer has separate functions, yet all 3 layers are interconnected and directly impact each other. As we learn about the layers in the internal structure of the ego, this clarifies the purpose of identifying what the ego is and how it operates within us. When we understand how ego operates inside our mind, we are better equipped to heal the energetic imbalance. First dimensional memory storage of the unconscious mind. The first internal layer, this is the root layer of our unconscious mind, and it functions like a hard drive for the ego. In this hard drive is the cellular memory storage from all of one's life streams. This means that cellular memories from past lives, present lives, and future lives may all be stored in this memory hard drive. These memories are not given value when they are recorded, whether one may perceive them as good or bad. These many multiple memories are stored on the root hard drive of every human being. Whether one was a fetus, a baby, in between lifetimes, or unconscious, when the body suffered abuse, it was recorded in one's memory storage, whether one currently remembers that event consciously or not. Because the planet was invaded and our individual memory and identity erased from those tragic events, most all human beings have 4 main areas of cellular memory record in their unconscious mind at varying degrees. Those 4 main areas are abuse, trauma, shock, and devastation. Some people will feel these painful memories, but not know what caused them or where they came from. Others will suffer from shock and will have shut down these memories completely as a coping mechanism. Others are successful clearing these memories through emotional healing and clearing practices, such as with hypnosis and past life regression. Since the first-dimensional unconscious mind controls our autonomic nervous system and autonomic body functions, unhealed memory trauma in these 4 main areas creates many kinds of physical symptoms and disease. These devastating memories have been partially described in twisted half-truths, in the fall of humankind, or the Genesis story of Adam and Eve in the Bible. Starseeds have an Earth mission to heal these memories and timelines from the hard drive in a multitude of ways. The second dimensional walls of separation in the instinctual mind. There are 7 main walls of separation which are described as unworthiness, shame and guilt, lack of trust and self-doubt, betrayal and abandonment, anger and rage, fear, entrapment and enslavement. This is the second internal layer. This area is the instinctual layer of ego, which for many people remains a part of their unconscious, as many do not pay attention to the cause of their instinctual drives or addictions. The first part of healing is to be willing to pay attention to these drives through dedicated self-awareness. The second layer is directly impacted by the first layer hard drive, to the degree the painful memory is experienced in the person. This second layer could also be called the pain body. It is located where unresolved pain memories will manifest as instinctual drives or addictions within the person's ego. If the first dimensional storage memories are not identified or cleared, the pain of these memories create walls of separation in the second dimensional layer as a pain body. The pain body further creates walls of separation which manifest in the ego as the 7 primary mental and emotional states that we have identified. These walls of separation isolate the ego self in the person, and as the person identifies with that ego state, they become disconnected from their inner spirit. This disconnection from the inner spirit creates a wall where another part of the ego identity may split off and may hide itself. This identity could have been created when one is a baby, a 6-year-old child, a teenager, or even in other timelines. This phenomena is called ego subpersonalities, and they may be hidden behind the walls as a result from deeply experienced trauma. These traumatized subpersonalities of the ego also hold a fragment of our spiritual energy and consciousness. The goal of satanic ritual abuse, or SRA, is to intentionally create these traumatized subpersonalities, which fragment the mind, fragment the spiritual body, thereby causing harm to the internal energy structures of the person's aura. The current way this is enforced in mass on planet Earth through the negative alien agenda is through the victim-victimizer software program. When we are separated from our inner spirit, we are disconnected from our experience with God's source. The result is more pain, disconnection, and disease, which exacerbates the ego walls and perpetuates the cycle of misery. The goal of our inner spirit is to find and locate those subpersonalities, to heal them, to reclaim them as children of God, so that the spiritual light can be reintegrated and brought back into wholeness. The third dimensional houses of ego in the conscious mind. The 7 houses of ego are addiction and lust, wrath rage or vengeance, greed or avarice, envy or jealousy, gluttony and waste, laziness and discouragement, and last, pride and self-importance, whether believing you are less than or more than others. This is the third internal layer. This area is the conscious mind layer of the ego, of which we all perceive as a self or as a personality. As one pays attention to their conscious thoughts, one becomes aware if they are having negative ego thoughts, as defined by the 7 houses of ego. All houses of ego are formed by making judgments of people and external circumstances. The third layer is directly impacted by the first and second layers to the degree that the painful memories have created walls of separation and traumatized subpersonalities. If the main areas of the walls of separation are not dismantled and subpersonalities brought into transparency for healing, these hidden influences control and manipulate the strength and power within the person's houses of ego. Essentially, the more weak and the more in pain a person is, the more strong their walls of separation, which is their pain body, creates judgments which build the houses of ego. In most cases, the houses are also created as a coping mechanism to deal with the harshness experienced in the third-dimensional world. The houses of ego are a direct rejection of God's Spirit and repel the Christ Spirit from dwelling within one's body. If the houses of ego are extremely strong, and the person replays their characteristic behaviors repeatedly, that ego behavior as an energy vibration builds an internal house, which then attracts a spirit to that house. As example, if a person has an addiction problem sourcing from unhealed trauma and replays addictive behavior repeatedly, a house of addiction will be built as an internal structure of the ego mind. Once that house of ego is built internally, it attracts a spirit of the same consciousness energy that will match the vibrational quality in the internal house. The spirit of addiction is a demonic spirit. So as one builds a house of addiction inside their mind and body, it attracts a demonic spirit to dwell within their internal house. As the laws of energetic structure states, one has built an internal house and has thus created the energetic agreement for a demonic spirit to dwell inside that house. This is the consensual agreement that unaware humans make for demonic spirits to dwell inside their body, and then later, the consent they give the predator force to use their body as a dark portal. Walls of separation plus houses of ego equal realm of the predator. As we begin to see how deep the painful ego behavior runs through in humanity, one may recognize that a clear pattern is present. The predator force intentionally creates hidden consensual agreements through the manipulation and abuse of the universal laws of structure. They start implementing a reign of terror and pain upon the human being as young as possible, to record painful and traumatic memories that fragment the mind and spirit. As the human reincarnates with their conscious memory wiped, they carry the pain and burden from lifetime to lifetime. From the accumulative lifetimes of pain builds more internal walls of separation, which are purposely held in place through the victim-victimizer software, a self-enforced human enslavement program. Through the deep unworthiness and lack of self-love resulting from repeated traumatic abuse, the rejection of God, and the crucifixion of the inner spirit is maintained easily on the planet. This leads to negative ego behaviors to cope with disconnection from God, which we can observe in the 7 houses of ego. As we build these houses of ego from darkness or ignorance, we allow their equivalent demonic spirit or consciousness energy to dwell inside our mind and body. These demonic spirits increase the power of the houses of ego in human behavior, which further invite the predator force to use or possess the mind and body at will. This is the definition of mental bondage and spiritual bondage to the predator or dark forces. The archontic deception is designed to create hidden internal energetic structures and vibrationally matched external structures which allow the predators to have a free-for-all on planet Earth. If a conscious human being starts to comprehend the power inherent in controlling their own mind, and thus changing their internal structures, the external structures built upon the houses of ego will fail. Thus, the higher knowledge is suppressed, or the victimizer program is directed to the targets who are giving other humans this awareness in order to learn how to become free. This brings us to issues of deception and manipulation of the people around us who may be used as a dark portal for predator forces. Ego behaviors plus the realm of predator equal a dark portal. During this end cycle, the stakes are high, and there is an increase of people being used as a dark portal for the realm of the predator. When we observe this scenario, it is best to be completely and utterly neutral. However, to learn how to identify and discern what one is looking at. A predator force is what it is. We are observing the predator forces using people through their ego weaknesses and pain. Observe this non-judgmentally as the compassionate witness when it is present in people or relationship dynamics. However, the most important point is to not allow the predator force to corrupt one's mind and body through the indulgence of negative ego behaviors, such as listed in the guideline of the 7 houses of ego. Most people do not realize that the predator will show itself aggressively to its opposing polarity, which is the prey or the victim. The predator has predictable instincts and will try to overpower a person who is spiritually weakened, especially with forms of abuse. If one has been undergoing a spiritual program to create internal and external strength from past physical, mental, or emotional abuse, it is wise to stay clear of any abusive or risky behavior. When we are learning to trust, when we are learning to build our inner spiritual light to strengthen our being, we need to be focused on living in Christic principles and developing self-love. This means we must learn better boundaries to discern ego, cut abusive ties, and to learn how to say no to other people. When a person is using the houses of ego to perceive reality and make judgments around events, that person cannot have an accurate assessment of the true conditions. It is important to understand that this guideline is true in ego-based humans incarnated on Earth, and it is also present in humans on the other side, as well as many other types of extra-dimensional beings. Many extra-dimensional beings that are channeling through humans here on Earth also have unresolved ego issues and potentially judgmental perceptions. Walls of separation in the pain body that lead to ego behaviors block energetic and spiritual discernment, thus creating self-deception. When a person perceives reality from the lens of ego, the perception of circumstances is reflected back as a self-projection. This means the person projects his ego judgment of the circumstances, which will always reflect back to the person as a deception or illusion. The ego holds little access to truth. In the more advanced cases of walls of separation that create houses of ego, the demonic spirit will show itself when that thought form is being activated in the unaware person. When a human expresses repeated negative ego behavior, the spirit of its thought form expression will manifest. Many of us have seen the creatures of lust, addiction, greed, fear, and pain when attached to a person's energy field. We are learning that they are living in the internal structures of ego within that person. The person is mostly unaware that their mind and body is being used by demonic spirits. When the demonic or predator reveals itself, the person that is being used as a dark portal lapses in short-term memory and current now awareness. This is why many homicidal killers do not remember the act of killing, but awaken back into the conscious memory after the killing has occurred. The mind and body was taken over to commit the predatory act. Have you ever wondered why two or more people will have such vast differences of perception of events they all witnessed simultaneously? This is largely due to the lens of ego that clouds individual perception of the actual event. This is especially so when the disagreement erupts between people over a personal or professional conflict that is heavily based in judgmental thinking. Depending on the lens of ego, and unresolved pain will be the slant of perception that is projected upon the circumstances or other people. This is why communicating openly and without ego judgment is important to bring more peaceful resolution and harmony in one's relationships. The importance of clearing the walls of separation and houses of ego cannot be underestimated, as together they are the key that unlocks the pathway to spiritual development and freedom. Spiritual development is building the relationship to oneself and building one's relationship to God. Time, energy, and commitment to build these two most important relationships in one's life is required. Daily meditation, quieting the mind while asking the self and God these questions will begin to reveal clarity and gain results. The Spirit of Christ. As it is understood, there are demonic spirits that live in the internal structures of ego which cause harm to our mind and body. One would be motivated to learn how to create the internal houses for the Spirit of Christ. As the universal law of structure states, we can build our house in so that the spirit we design it for can reside. This is what it means to create a house for Christ and to purify ourselves for the spirits of Christ. The Spirit of Christ requires a house in which to dwell inside our mind and inside our body. The goal for spiritual protection is to dismantle the houses of ego, evict the demonic and predator forces, and replace them with the houses of Christ. State your authority and intention to be of service to God, and build a strong relationship with one's inner spiritual light and Christos. As you devote your attention and focus on the quality of the spirits of Christ, the houses for Christ internally grow stronger. Where we focus our energy and attention, its energetic form will materialize, thus greatly increasing one's relationship to God and experiencing energetic balance, which returns us into feelings of self-love, peace, and happiness. The spirits of Christ, purity, generosity, patience, kindness, discipline and conservation, diligence, and humility. As a suggested exercise, dismantle the house of lust and addiction. Evict the spirit of lust and addiction, and call in the spirit of purity. Ask God to help you build the house of purity and live with sexual ethics in your mind and body aligned with Christ's Spirit. Dismantle the house of wrath, rage, and vengeance. Evict the spirit of wrath, rage, and vengeance. Call in the spirit of patience. Ask God to help you build the house of patience in your mind and body to be aligned with the Christ Spirit. Dismantle the house of greed and avarice. Evict the spirit of greed. Call in the spirit of generosity. Ask God to help you build the house of generosity in your mind and body so it is aligned with Christ's Spirit. Dismantle the house of envy and jealousy. Evict its spirit of envy and jealousy. Call in the spirit of kindness. Ask God to help you build the house of kindness in your mind and body, aligned with Christ's Spirit. Dismantle the house of gluttony and waste, and evict its spirit of gluttony and waste. Call in the spirit of discipline and conservation. Ask God to help you build the house of discipline and conservation in your mind and body, so it is aligned with Christ's Spirit. Dismantle the house of laziness and discouragement. Evict the spirits of laziness and discouragement. Call in the spirit of diligence. Ask God to help you build the house of diligence in your mind and body, so it is aligned with Christ's Spirit. Dismantle the house of pride and self-importance. Evict the spirit of pride and self-importance and call in the spirit of humility. Ask God to help you build the house of humility in your mind and body, aligned with the Christ Spirit. May we come to know the strength, protection, and peace of God on the earth. Until next, stay in the luminosity of your avatar Christ heart path. Be kind to yourself and each other. God's Sovereign Free, or GSF, and with a loving heart, signing off until next month.